I need to break my silence on this. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So I wasn't going to make a video about the fact that Robert Downey Jr. is returning to the MCU, but some recent information has really recontextualized things for me and given me some much needed clarity on how I feel. Before I give you my thoughts on this, though, be sure to hit that like button and comment down below your take on Robert Downey Jr.'s return as Doom. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, and of course, if you want extra exclusive content, you can find that on my Patreon. I have tons of videos, including reactions, commentary tracks, and live Q&As over there. Any support goes a very long way, so consider joining the Film Stock Patreon community today. So this past weekend was San Diego Comic-Con, and Marvel had their Hall H panel, and as they tend to do, they ended it with a bang as they announced the next two Avengers movies. They were going to be Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars originally. That is no more. We're still getting Secret Wars. It's the second of two, with the first being Avengers Doomsday. They're scheduled as of right now, we all know Marvel changes these things, to release in May of 2026 and May of 2027. Now, who's directing said films? None other than MCU vets, the Russo brothers. That's right, they are coming out of Marvel retirement. For the first time since Endgame, they will be directing two MCU films back to back. Potentially the two biggest movies of the century, maybe even ever made. I guess they realized their movies outside of the MCU weren't really landing with critics or fans, so they wanted to go back to something they were familiar with. Or they're in it for the money. More on that later. But without a doubt, the biggest piece of news associated with these Avengers movies is who will be playing Dr. Doom. As you've all probably heard by now, none other than Robert Downey Jr. himself is coming back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe to play Dr. Doom, the big baddie of these films. That's right, the face of the MCU for over a decade, Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, is coming back to play a villain. When I initially saw this news, I was actually at my friend's wedding and I got a Twitter notification about it, and I immediately dismissed it as parody. I was like, oh, somehow one of those fake discussing films accounts went viral with this fake news out of Comic-Con, right? Nope. I clicked the tweet and I saw this video of Robert Downey Jr. unmasking himself as Dr. Doom, and then it hit me that Marvel really went there.
Then I think we're gonna need the greatest actor.
So how do I honestly feel about this? My gut reaction on Saturday was, why? I was more mad about it than anything, the obvious reason being that it would be really difficult for them to bring him back without diminishing the legacy and sacrifice of Tony Stark. Like, every time we see Doom or hear him speak, I'm immediately going to think of Iron Man / Tony Stark, and that's going to be really difficult to handle for a bit. But then I took to Twitter, as we all do when news like this drops, and I read up on it a bit more to try and cope with the news, like potential routes they could take. And according to some of those comic accounts, they could take a route where he plays a variant of Iron Man who ultimately becomes Doom in another universe, and I could see that, but it still seems kind of far-fetched, right? Then even more recently, an article from Variety dropped revealing Downey and the Russo brothers have huge paydays to return for these movies. The Russos are supposedly being paid $80 million to direct both films, with RDJ making significantly more. What's that old saying? Money talks? That's about right. In the process of coping with this news, I was trying to approach it from the angle of the Russos and Downey wouldn't come back unless they really had a compelling story to tell, right? Kind of like how Tom Cruise was with Top Gun Maverick. He was like, we had this idea for years and years, but I wasn't going to come back until we had it perfect. That's how I was hoping this would be. The same thing applies for like Ralph Macchio returning as Daniel LaRusso. In his book, he talks about how he was pitched ideas for years, but it wasn't until Cobra Kai came around that he really was like, okay, I can get on board with this as a legacy sequel. But after reading this Variety article, I realized Robert Downey Jr. and the Russo brothers stand to make a load of money doing something they're already comfortable doing, working with Marvel. So I got a little more concerned about these movies actually being great. On top of that, Marvel as a whole has been undeniably struggling as of late with their theatrical releases. You look at the Marvels, Quantumania, Eternals, some of the films from the pandemic era, they underperformed greatly at the box office. They still have hits, but they're almost outliers, such as No Way Home, Deadpool and Wolverine, or Guardians 3. You throw in the reception of some of these MCU Disney Plus shows, and the Marvel Studios brand has taken a hit, whether you want to admit it or not. So this move ultimately reeks of some desperation in an attempt to return to something that was once great, i.e. the Infinity Saga, as Marvel might want to play it safe by returning to the glory days of the MCU. And I can respect that to a certain extent because the MCU is a business at the end of the day, and businesses have to make business decisions that are going to make them the most money. However, from the standpoint of a fan, the biggest issue with these two Avengers movies and RDJ returning as Doom is that we don't have an Avengers team right now. There's been no real build-up to an Avengers film, unlike in the Infinity Saga, and we haven't even been introduced to this version of Doctor Doom yet that's supposedly going to be played by RDJ. Whereas with the Infinity Saga, we had Thanos as the big baddie, and he was slowly built up over the course of various films, making cameo appearances, post-credit scenes appearances, and his presence was feared just by saying his name. So they're already off to a start with regard to building up this new big baddie. Now, obviously, Robert Downey Jr. is an Oscar winner. To me, he's one of the great actors of our time. So I'm not remotely worried about his performance as Doom. This is not what that's about. I'm more so concerned with the big picture move by the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, why bring back the face of this entire franchise in Iron Man as a villain? Like, is there no care or concern for how general audiences or fans could be angered or more so confused by this? And I know you could say, well, that's just comic books for you. They bring back characters all the time. Sure, but these are comic book movies. It's vastly different from a comic book. Look, at the end of the day, as a fan of the MCU, I just hope these two Avengers movies can be great and that they can make it make sense from a story standpoint. Things have been getting more complicated with the multiverse being introduced, but if they can make it make sense, I'm all in. I'm still rooting for these movies. In fact, they're going to have to make a load of money if they want to make their money back, because the director budget and the budget for RDJ alone is already humongous. You have to factor in the VFX, the marketing, and of course all the other A-list stars that are going to be in this film. Like, who knows how ungodly expensive these two movies could be. I'm confident in saying they're probably going to be the two most expensive movies ever made. So yeah, RDJ's coming back, this time as a villain. The Russos are coming back to direct in the MCU, but we don't have a squad of Avengers that's established right now. We haven't even been introduced to this version of Doom, and Avengers Doomsday is supposed to come out in less than 2 years. I won't be surprised if these movies get pushed back. That's the name of the game as of late with Marvel announcing their lineup. Things change, things get delayed, things get scrapped. I won't be shocked if these movies get pushed yet again. But again, as a fan, I just hope these movies are truly great. I hope that they make it make sense. And the MCU better hope and pray that these two Avengers films reach the heights that Infinity War and Endgame did at the box office, or else it might be time to clean house at the MCU. If these two movies underperform somehow, if these two movies bomb somehow, the MCU might be no more. But that does it for my thoughts on RDJ's return as Doctor Doom. Do you think it's a desperate move? Are you all in? Let me know in the comments down below, and of course hit that like button. I talk more about this on the Unusual Couple podcast episode that dropped this week. We also talk about Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, and tons of other fun stuff. So go subscribe to the Unusual Couple podcast if you haven't already. But yeah, that'll do it. I appreciate you guys' support as always. Look forward to more content coming very soon. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.